Hello everyone, Desert Gold here. It's been a while, so I thought I'd dust off the old antiquated camera and try to put a quick one together. Came up with an idea that came to mind after dealing with some challenges with some of my piston builds. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with piston systems. Most people tend to stick with the DI systems, but I've always been a big fan of piston systems, and they've always worked out well for me. I like the idea that most of the heat and gunpowder, burnt powders are being discharged outside of the chamber. Recently, I ran into a problem with my build that I did about a year ago. It was this upper that I had a Bear Creek Bear Claw 16-inch heavy barrel on, and instead of sticking with Adams Arms piston systems, which are outstanding, and at that time I decided to gravitate towards the new entry into the market, or newer entry into the market, by Superlative Arms. Now, their system is a pretty nice system. It's I've showed, I think, this before, but basically you've got a relatively small gas block, and you've got a adjustment screw there that goes, or I should say has some 30 different settings. The first 4.5 turns from closed, full closed, is restrictive mode, and then from 4.5 on to fully open is bypass mode. So this port on the side here vents the hot gases out the front in bypass mode. So it is supposed to have a beneficial effect on mitigating recoil. Although if you're familiar with 5.56, which most of you are, there's not much recoil involved in that, so I'm not sure how valuable that is. And on top of it, we have 30 different, as I said, adjustment points, which I don't know how many of you are going to really dial in a gas system, between, say, the 15 click or the 16 click or 5 click. Most of the time you dial a system in and you bring it down to the bare minimum of gas entering the system to keep the bolt carrier group functioning, and so that it locks open on the final round. Well, in my journeys, while I was really infatuated with Superlative Arms, I began to find out that they weren't quite the customer service company that I had thought they might be. They don't return voicemails when you call them. They don't return emails when you ask for some support with questions that you're having. And one of them happened to be a question with this specific situation. Now, before I get into it, this is a Superlative Arms bolt carrier. And I think I've showed you this before. If you can see the light, I'll show it. There's a dimple in the gas key, or the strike face of what would be the gas key. And The Adams arms is a solid flat face. The drive rod on a Superlative arms system has a rounded end to interact with that dimple in the strike face. So during this time, I was doing or building my or rebuilding my SBR, and I pulled the Adams arm system on there that was off to give this a try with the Superlative arms for a specific reason, in that it was over gassing with my old muzzle brake. Also, I decided to go with a low mass bolt carrier in the system to increase cyclic rate, because this has a binary trigger in it. The second generation Franklin Arms trigger, which is notorious for hammer follow. So I was trying to increase cyclic rate of the whole bolt carrier group system and try to mitigate that with a lighter bolt carrier, a stronger buffer spring. And in return, I started having problems with overgassing. So I contacted, or tried to contact, Tony over at Superlative Arms to see if they were coming out with a low mass bolt carrier that would work with their system. And that was about a year ago, and he said, yeah, we're gonna have it out by December. Well, December came and went, and long story short, they never had an ability to put out a low mass bolt carrier as does Adams Arms, because they don't do any of their machining, they ship it out. That's another reason that their systems take so long to get, or they're out of stock a lot, because they're waiting for parts to come in. All that being said, my main questions for Superlative, Tony over at Superlative Arms, is this system setup per their instructions is pretty straightforward. You take your drive rod, put it in without its spring into the gas block, close it up, and put it on the barrel. All the way. And then what you are supposed to do is take their bolt carrier, stripped bolt carrier, no bolt or anything, and put it in. And what you're supposed to do is slide it in. So you're supposed to slide it in. And it's supposed to separate from the shoulder. And it isn't really doing that. So I sent an email to Tony explaining that I wasn't getting the separation from the shoulder to create the gap, and never got any answers. Now, why is it important for there to be a gap on the rifle? The actual gap isn't on the outside, it's on the inside. There's supposed to be between a 15 thousandths to 25 thousandths gap between the strike face and the drive rod. This is to allow some heat growth in the system at the strike face interface. And as you can be aware, or as you would know, it's impossible to measure that gap when the system is in place because you can't measure inside your upper. So therefore you have to do the measurement at the difference between the back of the shoulder and the back of the gas block and the shoulder and the barrel, and that has to be between 15 thousandths and 25 thousandths. So not having that information to me at that time, I went ahead and just kind of made a gap of my own, what I'd seen in the past, or what I thought I'd seen in the past, and figured it would be fine. Well, it wasn't. I was out of spec. The gas port on a rifle, a mil-spec rifle, from the shoulder to the center of the gas port is 295 thousandths. So if your gas block isn't within that range of, per the gap, your inlet for the gas block is going to be off. So instead of sitting over the gas port, it's going to be sitting either too far, or too short or too long. And in my case, it was too short. So after about 25 rounds, I was still not able to get the bolt carrier group to stay open on the final round, and I finally decided to take it apart, and that's when I really found out the seriousness of the problem. Not only was the gas port out of spec with respect to the gas block, the hot gases and residues that were coming out of the gas port actually seized the block to the barrel. And I'm telling you, it took me almost a half an hour to get that gas block off. I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but I don't think you will. But there's all sorts of dimples in this chair from me taking I'll show you the hammer I was using. It wasn't one of those nylon hammers. It was this carpenter's hammer, and I was literally just wailing away on that gas block. That gas block. Eventually, it came off, and I'm going to put a picture in of the final results of the damage to the block. But at that point, I just wanted it off. When I got it off, I could see inside that the entire inner circumference of the gas block was white. I thought at first that the melaniting was defective or coming off, but that didn't make sense to me, so I got some cleaner and emery cloth, and I started cleaning it out, and it all came out. And that's when I knew what happened. It was not feeding the gas into the port of the gas block because it was not aligned properly. So there's a very expensive teaching lesson for me on that. But all things being said, if I had proper information going in from the company that made the gas block and was judicious about, you know, following through with things, they should have been judicious about answering customer calls, answering customer questions on emails. And had I had the proper information, I would have dodged that bullet. The only reason I'm still using Superlative arms is because I still have 3 more blocks that I've already paid for. I might sell them on eBay, I don't know, but at this time, my 6.8 is got one on it, and I took it to the range yesterday and it worked out, so it looks like the 25 thousandths is a good place to be on the gap between the barrel shoulder and the gas block edge. So I'm sorry if this was a boring video, but I think it's important to understand that there's more to the setup of a piston system sometimes, especially if, you know, you're not getting the proper support. You know, eventually Tony got back to me with respect to this, and he says that Adams Arms has a proprietary barrel, and I would need to send the upper end for him to dial it in. That makes no sense to me, because this has, well, first of all, I'm sure all of you are aware Adams Arms and their machining capabilities are all within spec. And out of curiosity, I did measure the distance between the shoulder and the middle of the gas port, and it was dead nuts on at 295 thousandths. So 25 thousandths is a very good gap for the gas block to the distance from the shoulder. And initial testing's working. It's showing that with enough information, or the proper information, that things go together. And from now on, any new systems that I put piston systems on are going to be the new Micro P Adams Arms blocks. Awesome blocks. They've only got 5 positions on their adjustable block, but you know what I'm finding out of 30 adjustments on a block, once you've dialed in the proper gas for the system, you leave it there. You don't sit there and putz with it. Now, if I put a suppressor on this, you putz with it. But then again, you're going to be going through 30 different variations to find the right one, as opposed to Adams Arms Micro P block, and you got a suppressor setting, and you just put it on that and you're done. So yeah, I'm over Superlative Arms. I mean, they've got a good product. They only got together with their support and followed through with helping the customers that pay for their products, then I think their business would grow. I mean, he doesn't seem to care much about customers, and their problems. He just wants to sell the product as fast as he can. So anyway, I think I've bent your ears enough. Just keep in mind that always try to get all your answers before you start putting stuff together like I did. Anyway, Desert Gold, I'm gonna go have a beer and drink my sorrows away. Yeah. Everybody have fun, be safe.